Hey guys, I hope that you guys are doing amazing wherever you are in the world. My name is Shikha and I welcome you to my channel. As always, I'm so grateful that you guys are listening, subscribing and commenting. I appreciate the support. And if you're interested in supporting me further, you can do that by going to my Patreon or Ko-fi link. They're both in the description below. I'm at Chiang Mai temple here, one of the temples. There are many, there are hundreds of temples here. One of them is right next door to my house. It's called Wat Santitam. And I thought that because I'm talking about Buddhism in this video, that I would do a video next to the temple, the Buddhist temple, because I thought it would be so poignant and so perfect, right? In today's video, I wanted to speak to you guys about separation, which is the basic tenet of Buddhism, one of the major tenets of Buddhism, one of the reasons why there is so much suffering on the planet, or that's what Buddhism says. And as long as we consider ourselves separate from everyone else and from this world, we will have the continuation of the suffering, right? So kind of to go back to what is the separation that I'm speaking about. Now, of course, I'm not an expert in any of this stuff, right? This is just my interpretation of all the different books that I've read, and I read a lot of books on it, and I really appreciate it, and I learned a lot from it. One of them, actually, I would recommend to you guys is called Radical Acceptance by Tara Brach, T-A-R-A-B-R-A-C-H. And in that, she speaks a lot about the separation and about how it causes us suffering. But what I wanted to speak to you guys about was the basic essence is that, we are all divine. We are all not separate from God. And again, maybe this kind of would be a little bit of opposition to your current views. So if it is, and you don't like it, you can just switch this video off, okay? But in general, what Buddhism says and what a lot of religions say is that we are divine. We are all creatures of God, and we are made up of God. We are God, basically, is the essence of it. Now, when you say these words out loud, it seems very egotistical. But we're not just saying that we are God. We're saying that every creature on this planet, every sentient being or non-sentient being, every being in general, is God. It's not just us. It's not just you. It's not just me, it's not just that rock, it's not just that temple. Everything is God, right? We're all part and parcel of Him, we're made up of Him, and we are Him, or her, or it, whatever it might be, right? And so we are God, and they're God, and the person behind me is God, and that insect roaming around me, the fly buzzing around me, they're God. We're all, because God is everything, and therefore we're all made up of Him. Therefore, there's nothing that cannot be Him, right? Yeah. So, in that sense, what happens is that what we do as human beings, I don't think any other creature really does this, because they don't have these conscious thoughts, oh, I'm separate from God, or things like that. They live their life. But what we do, I think, as human beings is that we separate ourselves from God. We think that, so Buddha is divine and he's God, but I'm not God. Or Jesus Christ is God, but I'm not God. Prophet Muhammad is, may peace be upon him, is God, but I'm not, right? And we can't separate ourselves. Or all the saints are gods, but we're not, And so we tell ourselves that we're not God. We're not part of Him, we're not divine. We're just miserable beings that are here to suffer, and they'll suffer, and then eventually we'll go away from the planet, and then that'll be the end of it, right? Different religions believe in different things. Of course, some people believe in reincarnation. But in general, there is this idea that, we come, we suffer, we go, that's it. That's the end of it. But what Buddhism is trying to tell us, and that's what my interpretation is of it, is that we're not separate from God. We are God. So that means that all the separation that we're creating on the planet is the reason for the suffering. If we realize that we're not separate from God, then we would be able to alleviate that suffering. How? Well, basically, a lot of the suffering that we cause ourselves is because we consider ourselves separate from the person in front of us. For example, if you have an argument with your father about the fact that he's not treating you properly and he's disrespecting you, or you're disrespecting him, whatever the conflict might be, basically the conflict arises because you consider yourself to be separate from him, and he considers himself to be separate from you. You are two beings looking at each other rather than one being looking at itself. If you had the idea, or if you could consider the idea that you're not separate from him, he's not another being, he's just a part of you, you would be able to look at him perhaps with a little bit more compassion, a little bit more love, and you'd be able to realize that you're just basically fighting with yourself, right? Now, of course, that level where you're like, yeah, I am the same as you, you're the same as me, it comes at maybe a different level, perhaps. It's a little bit difficult, I should say. It's very difficult, actually, to think of it that way, and to be like, yeah, I'm not separate from anyone, I'm the same as everyone, and therefore I'm going to have compassion for everyone. It takes practice, a lot of practice, and I think it takes a lot of mindfulness and consistent practice throughout every single day, every single moment, right? So basically, the essence is that if you realize that you are not separate from anything, you wouldn't be able to cause harm to anything around you or anyone around you, because you are causing harm to yourself. You wouldn't be able to hurt anyone around you. You wouldn't be able to do anything negative to anyone around you or anything around you, because you'd be causing hurt or doing something negative to yourself. If we're all one, and we're all part of this divine nature that is God, we're all just the same, we're all just one being, and we're not separate from each other, which is the other part of it, that means that we're all the same, and therefore we can't cause harm to someone else. Then you would have a little bit of a harder time yelling at your children, or perhaps yelling at your father, or causing harm to the earth, or stamping a fly out even, because you'd be like, well, I'm killing a part of me. I'm killing God. I'm killing a divine being. How can I do that? Or I'm being hurtful to a divine being. How can I do that? Now, as I said, of course, this is it's a way of thinking which is very difficult for us, because in general, what we try to do as human beings, especially as human beings, is that we try to separate ourselves from everyone around us. And the reason the ego, which is the one that does this, the reason the ego needs to do this is because if we weren't separate from everyone else around us, how would we differentiate ourselves from other people? The ego needs differentiation. It needs to know that it's different, it's unique, it's better than the people around it, so that it can boost itself up. Our ego needs that in order to feel good about itself. But if it doesn't have that, then it feels terrible, and that's when we start getting low self-esteem and things like that. So what happens, or part of it is that, what happens is that the ego needs all of these separation things. It needs other people to be separate. It needs other people to be below us. It needs other people and things to be less than us or different than us in order to feel differentiated and unique. And because of that, because of the ego and because of the separation, it's fine. We feel like, all right, yeah, I'm better than you because I've done this, that, and you're worse than me because of that, and that person's better than me because they have more money, and this person's better than me because they're famous, and so I'm going to respect them, or whatever it might be. That's how the world works. But can you imagine if we didn't have that separation? A lot of the environmental disasters that are happening right now, a lot of that would be reduced significantly, I think, or at least part of it would be reduced, would be because you'd be realizing that you're basically just causing harm to God's creatures and part of you. You're a part of that, and you're just causing harm to yourself. That's one of the things that Buddha says, when you start thinking about these kind of things, you stop eating meat a lot of times, because you realize, well, basically you're just eating parts of yourself, and that's just cannibalism. Well, that's not exactly how he says it, but that's how I think of it. You're basically just eating, you're eating God, you're eating a divine creature. How can you do that? Now, I'm not saying that I recommend that everyone stop eating meat right away. It's just, that's one of the things that comes up in this tenet of not creating separation and realizing that everyone is just one being. I've done other videos on this whole theory about one being and one consciousness, divine consciousness, supreme consciousness, collective consciousness, whatever term you want to use for this. But in general, it's the realization that you are not separate. You are not a separate creature from everyone else. There is this collective consciousness. Everyone is just one creature. You might have these different bodies, obviously, which is part of the learning process, part of the soul journey that we're on. We have these different separate bodies, but that's just it. That's it. We just have separate bodies. But even then, if you look energetically deeper within, you realize that we're all connected. There's always a connection between every person on this planet, energetically, And at the quantum level, for sure there's a connection, right? So that's what I wanted to share with you guys. Again, as I said, I'm not an expert, but that's the basic essence of what I look at when I'm trying to be compassionate, when I'm trying to bring love into my life and be less crazy, be less separate from the world. This is how I think of it. That person in front of me that I'm judging right now, or that I'm hating right now, or I'm despising or disliking, they're the same as me. They are part of me. They're also God's creature. They're also divine, and we're just all one. And that kind of thinking, that kind of learning, it really instantaneously a lot of times reduces that judgment, and also reduces any kind of hate or dislike that I might have for that person. It's so instantaneous, this feeling, and it's very powerful, and it has been very powerful for me particularly. And I'm not even close to really working with this thought or working with this idea. I still just intermittently think of it and use it. But obviously that's where we're trying to get to, is that we live this essentially in our life, where basically every moment in our life we think of ourselves as not separate from the world, not separate from that tree, not separate from that building, not separate from the person in front of us, not separate from the clouds, not separate from the earth. We're not separate from anything. Everything is just one thing. We're all part of just one being. So how can we cause harm to ourselves? How can we cause harm to the earth? How can we cause harm to that person in front of you? How can you cause harm to that tree? You can't. It's just not possible. Why would you harm yourself? I mean, there are some people who do self-harm, but very rarely do we want to cause harm to ourselves. Again, I hope this makes sense. If there's parts of it that you didn't understand or you want me to expand on, obviously please let me know. I will do a further follow-up video. Just a comment below with your questions. And again, realize that I'm not an expert. I'm just sharing my opinions or ideas on the facts. So hopefully it's not too crazy for you guys. And also, hopefully if I do make a mistake, it's just, this is my understanding, that's all. I'm not an expert. If you guys want to support me further because you like these videos, obviously you can do that by going to my Ko-fi link. The link is in the description below. And I shall see you guys in the next video. Bye for now.